Her fangs. "May the gods guide us," shouted Lynsi. Her voice carried over the sound of their horses' hurried march, and jarred out of its normally steady tone. Shopu laughed. "It is as you believe it. Pray hard, but do keep your fight about you as well." The lieutenant balanced herself in the stirrups of her saddle, raising her long knives, those battle-tempered fangs. Lynsi glanced at her own weapon, her sword, still polished and passing for new. Fresh on her mind was Shopu's habit of allowing enemy steel to bite her knives in place of that pretty sword, her family's heirloom. She noticed now Shopu's focus and the way she wove around the fields, lining herself up to things they hadn't yet seen. Lynsi admired her, the sureness of her battle approach and the way she flung herself headfirst into danger and always knew she'd come back in one piece. What faith she must have had to take the lead against an enemy they called the Eaters of Life. "For the glory of the gods, Lynsi." The lieutenant's statement shook Lynsi. She'd known her for a while. Never once had she seen her attempt to travel the oceanside paths to the Sicilian cathedrals. It was highly unlikely that her boots had ever been wet by the mist of the Gimian sea spray. So for whose gods did she seek glory, and why? Lynsi's questions fell by the wayside. They were now shiver in the battalion's line of sight, and Shopu, in true fashion, had already lined herself up for the first kill to be made. She cut hard to the left and then to the right, forcing her strike to run parallel to a group of shiver that were attacking a group of travelers that were yet to get to the safety of the city. Shopu's scream pierced the air, startling the shiver and calling their attention directly to her blades. The first victim dropped, its throat shredded and head torn from its shoulders in one swift maneuver. Shopu threw herself from her horse, rolling along the ground and springing out into another shiver's face. Her fangs tore into it, shredding the invader from head to toe. Another shiver ran to aid his fellow and was halted by a swift kick to its chest. "You have been blessed with the gift of wrath," mused Lynsi. "You might have so much compassion for us, because you have so little for anyone else." Lynsi leapt from her horse, immediately unsheathing her sword and clashing with a shiver. Her thoughts wandered, undisciplined, finding the first of the marks along her sword. The shiver's powerful stance forced her back and caused her knees to buckle. Over her shoulder, a shade of black and blue blocked her vision to the left. It was Maki, thrusting his spear and the battalion's banner into the shiver's face. He wrestled it to the ground, and Lynsi finished it with a stab to the chest. They stood there together, gathering themselves and taking in the sights of their lieutenant, finishing off her third shiver. The battalion finally caught up to them, falling from their horses and into combat. Most of them yelled and roared for their leader to hear. Her vicious smile reaffirmed the battalion's behavior. Shopu whistled out into the air, walking calmly into a group of shiver before narrowly avoiding a wide swing and stabbing that shiver in the face. She pulled her knife away, running now and carving large swaths from the bellies and necks of a few others. She jumped into the air, hearing the thunderous hooves of her mount. She rode off and into a circle and turned about to continue her attack from a different perspective. She whipped her blades around and cut a shiver's ankles into mulch to save one of her soldiers from an overwhelming attack. Her blades were furiously punched into the shiver's back until the blades were both stricken into the monster's skull. Shopu yanked the enemy away and took off to keep to her killing, never once even stopping to meet the glance of the person she saved. He hurried to his feet, knowing it was unlikely that she would be able to save him again. There weren't that many shiver here, only about 10 or so, that had escaped the main forces and gone towards the city. Shopu found this odd and prepared her men to form a line that would keep the city safe from other wandering invaders. "Let's get the ballistas out and get a foothold for the giants," Shopu yelled. Her blades were slung into their sheaths and her eyes focused again on the path ahead. Soldiers scrambled and set themselves into diamond patterns. The spearmen, stood on the right and left, while the front was covered by a swordsman, and the rear covered by an archer. Aside from them, there were soldiers who began to build wooden barriers and set up small turrets. Shopu's battalion quickly moved and got the stations set up before the next battalions were able to leave the safety of the wall and establish similar stations. Shopu's battalion cried out again with a war song and made indirect statements about their prowess. "The gods shall guide us," thought Lynsi again. "It is as I believe."